Welcome everyone to the Rotary Club of Jacksonville Zoom at noon meeting. I will now call the meeting to order by ringing the Rotary bell. We have a packed program today and plan to adjourn by 12:45. During the program, everyone will be on mute, so please feel free to submit questions by utilizing the chat function. I also want to remind you that today's presentation is being recorded. Gerald Thomas will provide today's invocation. Gerald?
Thank you, President Gerry. A few words of encouragement from a great humanitarian, Mother Teresa. People are often unreasonable and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you're kind, people may accuse you of ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you're honest, people may cheat you. Be honest anyway. If you find happiness, people may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today may be forgotten tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world your best, and it may never be enough. Give your best anyway. For you see, in the end, it's between you and God. It was never between you and them. Mother Teresa, President Gerry, back to you.
Thank you, Gerald. I'm excited to announce that our club, along with District Governor Rich Turnbull, will host an official check presentation to the Youth Crisis Center tomorrow, live about 1:30 p.m. It will be outside of the Parental Home Road location of YCC. Most of you are aware that all the money we saved from lunch meetings during the first and second quarter of this year were donated. First, to COVID-related projects to help with emergency needs in the Youth Crisis Center, and second, to the American Red Cross to fund our signature event project, Where There's Smoke, There's Fire. Tomorrow is about the Youth Crisis Center. We were successful in obtaining a $25,000 match from our District 6970. District Governor Rich Turnbull will join us as we present the Youth Crisis Center a check for $50,000. Members are welcome to attend. Mask and social distancing is recommended. We will be outside and not enter the building. Media will be present. In addition, your great work will be featured with Melissa Ross, host and producer of Florida Roundup and First Coast Connect. She will host our story on Wednesdays in the weekly Good News on Air and in their e-newsletter. Our district is providing a series of Women in Rotary meetings. The first was in July and has been recorded for those that missed it. The second in this series of Infinite Possibilities, Women in Rotary, will host nationally acclaimed speaker Jenny Stotts. This is a 4-part series. The next presentation will be 1 p.m. on August 28th. Please visit the Rotary District 6970 website for details. Members may register through the calendar in DACDB. Scott Eater served 3 decades in the United States Army Special Forces and the Central Intelligence Agency. He has been a valuable asset to our club since joining in 2016. Scott will introduce today's speaker. Scott?
Okay, thank you, President Gerry, and good afternoon, everyone. Today's speaker is Anthony Austin, one of the anchors at our very own First Coast News. In elementary school, Anthony's music teacher cast him as a news anchor in a play because she thought he resembled NBC Today Show's host, Brian Gumbel. And as Anthony's own words, he said he guessed the rest is history after that. Anthony joined First Coast News in January 2016 as an anchor and reporter who now anchors the evening newscasts with Jeannie Blaylock and Heather Crawford. He headed to Florida after spending 2 years as a primary anchor at Time Warner Cable News in Raleigh, North Carolina. Anthony grew up in East Texas. He graduated from the University of North Texas, where he majored in broadcast journalism and minored in social science. For nearly 6 years, Anthony was an anchor and reporter at the CBS affiliate in his hometown of Tyler, Texas. He worked his way up from weekend anchor to the anchor of the 5 p.m. news while he was there. Anthony's most memorable assignment was visiting Iraq. And Anthony, I'm going to presume that was with 4th Infantry Division, as I read on here. For a week, Anthony spent time with the soldiers of Fort Hood as they prepared to come home. He told their stories and showed viewers back home in Texas what they were doing for our country and for the people of Iraq. Anthony was also there as they returned home to their loved ones. Anthony enjoys volunteering in the community. He is on the board of directors of the American Diabetes Association and a mentor with the Take Stock in Children program. Outside of work, Anthony is a lover of good food and company, and you can often see him enjoying the restaurants and beautiful beaches here in the Jacksonville area. Fellow Rotarians, it's my privilege to introduce today's First Coast News speaker to us, Anthony Austin. Over to you, Anthony.
All right, thank you, Scott. That was an excellent introduction. I really appreciate it, and thank you all so much for inviting me to speak with you today. I always enjoy speaking to the Rotary Club. As Scott mentioned, I am from Texas, and I worked in my hometown for about 6 years, and I used to speak to the Rotary Club there in East Texas monthly, just about different topics. So I always enjoy speaking to this group. So I know Scott gave you a little bit of introduction about myself, but yeah, I have been here in Jacksonville. It'll be 5 years in January. And how I ended up here is actually kind of a funny story. I was looking for a new job after Raleigh, North Carolina. I love North Carolina, didn't necessarily like the job. So my former boss, who's now with actually NBC in New York, I was her intern about 12 years ago for the ABC station in Dallas. And so she found out I was looking for work, and the rest is history. And I've been here for 5 years now, and I love Jacksonville, and I love the people, and I'm glad to be here. So I know that today we're going to talk about basically news gathering. The media, how do we do our jobs? How do reporters go out and gather news and make sure that it's accurate? I will have to tell you, as I'm sure many of you know, our profession has been under fire in the past few years or so, and fake news has definitely become a common term that we are all familiar with. We don't love it, but we hear it all the time. So I kind of want to talk about how we go about the process of making sure that we do have accurate information, and sometimes the missteps that happen along the way. So I want to start off by sharing with you the principles of ethical journalism. This is something that my company put out. And I will tell you this, one of my coworkers said it best the other day. Journalism hasn't changed, but the challenges that we're up against have. With social media and everything else, it's so hard to try to get accurate information out because there's so many people out there who are not necessarily journalists who can change the narrative of certain situations and make things appear as if they were so when it's not actually true. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here with you so you can see. Actually, it says I can't do any screen sharing. It says host has disabled screen sharing.
One minute, Anthony, I'll take care of that.
Okay. I do, while we're working on that, I do want to tell you a quick story about why being accurate instead of first is a very big deal to me. When I was a young reporter out of college in Texas, I worked for the CBS affiliate, as Scott mentioned. And one Christmas, I was sent to some breaking news. There was a Christmas parade in a small town in East Texas, and a group of Boy Scouts, they were participating in that parade. Basically what happened, a man in a pickup truck, an older man, ran into the parade, and he hit several of the Boy Scouts. We did not know their conditions at the time. We didn't know exactly what had happened, but we got out there, and we needed to be on air quickly. Well, I got out there, and usually what we do when we're at a breaking news scene, we talk to different people there, witnesses, of course, to try to find out exactly what happened. Well, I was speaking to someone, and they told me that they knew for sure that one of the Boy Scouts had died. They said that they saw the body on the ground, they saw someone put a sheet over him, and they know for sure that he had been pronounced dead. Well, I was a young reporter, only about 22, 23 at the time, and I went to believe that this person was telling me the truth. Long story short, he was not telling me the truth. So I went on air, and I said that one of the Boy Scouts had died, according to witnesses. Well, at the time, the parents were at the hospital, and guess what? They were watching the news. And so they saw me come on air and say that one of the Boy Scouts had died. And so, of course, as any parent would, they took that very hard, and they were trying to figure out who died, what happened. Well, as I mentioned, that never happened. It wasn't true. I got a very angry, in fact, I got an angry call first from the superintendent of the school district where all those boys attended, and he called me into his office and wanted to speak with me about it. And let's just say he used a lot of four-letter words that I probably shouldn't repeat here when he was talking to me about the information that I had put out there, because a lot of parents were hurt by that wrong information because they thought maybe their child had died. So as a young reporter, that is something I have never forgotten. And that's why it's so important to me to make sure the information that I put out is accurate. I just can't tell you how long that story has always stuck with me. As the news anchor, especially as the evening news anchor, I'm kind of the final gatekeeper when it comes to getting accurate information out to the public. I don't know if you guys know how kind of it works, especially in a local news level and even national news. We have a team of producers. They write most of the newscast. I'm more just kind of the fact checker to make sure that what they wrote is correct, and also that I can present it and make sure it's easier for everyone to understand. So I kind of describe myself as the final gatekeeper. So I'm going to go ahead now and share my screen here so you can see. There we go. So you can see right here the principles of ethical journalism that we abide by. So my company, Tegna, our ethical standards, we stand by the principles of truth, independence, public interest, fair play, and also integrity. So let's talk a little bit about this. When it comes to truth, our goals: report the news accurately, thoroughly, and in context on all platforms. Also, vet sources, verify facts, and challenge your own assumptions before reporting news. Hold factual information on all platforms to do the same standards of accuracy. And I have to tell you this is something that is really big right now. In fact, our company, we have a segment, if you are familiar with us, called Verify. And this is all because of pretty much what social media has done to our business. So with Verify, we actually walk viewers through the process of showing them who we called and what information we looked up so they can see how we came to our final conclusion on a certain topic. Also, challenge your own assumptions before reporting news. I want to talk about this too, because sometimes I don't think people really understand how local news works. Local news and also kind of your network news, and I mean like ABC, NBC, CBS, that's all different from what you see on cable news channels. Because I will tell you, when it comes to cable news, Fox News, MSNBC, a little bit of CNN as well, they are a little slanted to certain audiences. That's cable news. They're different. When it comes to your local news and more of the big affiliates, NBC, ABC, CBS, we are all trying to be straight and narrow, down the middle as possible. But cable news, yes, they are catering to a certain audience. No matter, may it be conservative or liberal, whatever it may be, they know that they have an audience, and usually their stories are slanted toward that way. But that's not the situation with local news. We try to avoid that. But the reason I mention that, because it says to challenge your own assumptions. People are human. Reporters are human too. We're people first. So sometimes, no matter what it may be, people are coming into situations with a little bit of bias. And I always try to tell our young reporters that no matter what your opinion is, you have to stay down the middle and see both sides of a story. But sometimes a little bias will creep in there, because that's just how we are as people. You know, we all have grown up, believing certain things to be certain ways. And even if we try to see both sides, sometimes that can creep into there. So it's so important. I always tell our reporters that they consider that standard and keep their standard of staying neutral in all situations. Also, seek sufficient understanding of the communities, individuals, and stories we cover to inform the public. We have to be persistent in the pursuit of the whole story. Also, we have to be honest. Do not mislead sources or story subjects or the public. When we talk to people, we make sure that we tell them what the story is about, so they're not misled about. They say one thing, we're asking them about what's their favorite soda, and they say Dr. Pepper, but then the story ends up being a whole something about Coke. No matter what it may be, we don't want to mislead our sources. We want to tell them the complete and honest truth. Also, we want to attribute information received from others and be transparent with our sourcing. That's why we always try to say, the mayor says or the police chief says, because we want to let you know it's not us. We're not coming up with the numbers of the information. This is where the information came from. Also, never plagiarize. Keep your word. Do not misstate your identity or intentions, and do not intentionally slant the news. I have to tell you that because I hear that so many, from my own friends sometimes, who think that we have agendas and that we are doing certain things on purpose. Like I said, we are just ordinary people. This is a job that we are trying to do. We want to go home to our families or whatever it may be at the end of the day. It would be too much work to try to intentionally slant the news every day. Also, always value being accurate over being first. I want to talk a little bit about that, because accuracy does matter. And I hate to see some of the things I see in the business these days. One of my biggest problems, And this is just, once again, because of how things have changed. You know, it used to be that the 6 o'clock news, that was appointment television. You sat down with your family and you watched the 6 o'clock news to find out what was happening for the day. That's not necessarily the case anymore, because with social media, all you have to do is just pick up your phone and you can get the top headlines. You don't have to sit down and watch the news anymore. And with that, our business has changed where it used to be you did your story first and got that on the air. Well, now they want everything to be on social media first, to be on the web. They want the complete story there because they know that's where the people are. And so with that, and with so many TV stations trying to be first with information, sometimes people will push information out that's not necessarily accurate just because they're trying to be the first person to report it. So one of our things, even if we're the last station to do so, we try to be accurate first over being the first station that you hear the information about. Because I have to tell you, as a news anchor, there is nothing more embarrassing than having to go on the air and issue a retraction and say, oh, you know what I told you yesterday? Maybe not necessarily the case. So accuracy over being first is very important. So I'm going to stop there with our different principles. I'm going to go ahead and move now and share another screen that I have to show you some different examples of what we call information disorder. So let me go ahead and pull this up and get my screen share. All right, here we go. So information disorder, types of information disorder. So we have falseness. Is this information inaccurate? And then you also have intent to harm. Is the information created to cause harm? So let's start with misinformation. Misinformation is when people unintentionally make mistakes. Inaccurate photo captions, dates, statistics, or translations, or when satire is taken seriously. Once again, we're all human. And even as journalists, like I said, we are still people first. Typos happen. Sometimes people hear information incorrectly and they put that information out. You know, that's what you would call misinformation, where it's a mistake, where something is not intentionally done. Or, you know, something that I hate to see, but this happens all the time. People will make like a funny meme about something, some type of news story, and they'll post it on social media. The person who posted it, they know that it's a joke, but then somebody else, they see it and they think, oh, that really happened. This is serious. So that's examples of misinformation. And then on the extreme opposite, you have malinformation. Now, this is when people publicize accurate but private information to harm, like example, revenge porn, which has become something that happens a lot now, or leaks that pursue private rather than public interest, where it's not about something like, for example, it wouldn't be something about the president or the mayor's budget, but it would be something more about their personal life, about affairs or different private agendas that they seek out that really have nothing to do at the time with the office. That would be malinformation. And then in the middle, you have disinformation. That's when people intentionally create or share false information in order to harm someone. That includes fabricated news websites. We're seeing a lot of that. Also manipulated audio and visual content, which I'm going to show you some examples of a little bit later. And also different theories and rumors that are out there. Let me go ahead and advance to the next slide now. So this is an example of some misleading content. So you see 6 different gavels. Now this says that this illustration is comparing presidential confirmations of appellate judgeships, and it's misleading because of the size of the gavels. They're not to scale. Now President Trump's gavel should be less than twice as big as President Obama's here, because the number is 24, this is 15, but you see it's so exaggerated when they should be a little bit closer in size, but this makes this one stick out a lot more. So that was something that was published in the New York Times back in 2018, but that's an example of where things can be misleading when you look at different graphics like that. Also, let's talk about false context. This is something that we see a lot of now with social media as people rush to be first and also sometimes make up their own narratives to certain situations. So this account is actually associated with a Russian disinformation campaign, and it implies that the Muslim woman, if you can see there on your screen, she's there in the gray jacket. There's a man down there on the ground. And it says that this Muslim woman was depicted as being indifferent to the victim of the attack, depicted to her right. So you see the caption there, it says, Muslim woman pays no mind to the terror attack, casually walks by a dying man while checking phone. Well, in reality, she was actually not looking at the victim out of respect. And this account has now been deleted, but it was reported to The Guardian at the time. But that shows you how sometimes what we see is not necessarily exactly what happened. Let's talk about imposter content. This is something that we are seeing a lot of. So this example over here on the left, it has breaking news. This looks like maybe it could be from a news website. And it says that the general election will be held over 2 days. Well, of course, we know that that's not true. But you can see how someone has created and basically typed out their own story and put this headline there to basically fool people. This happens all the time. Also here, like Now This, they're kind of a news agency, and there was a video circulating with their branding about the Clintons and alleged rape victims. They did not produce the video, but someone, and this happens all the time because of the sophistication of Photoshop, people can take actual graphics from news companies and place them over video and make it seem like that actually appeared on the news, when that's not necessarily the case. So you see an example of that there. Also, here's another graphic showing some manipulated content. This was published on Teen Vogue. So you can see here in the left photo, they're holding what appears to be a paper there, like a target, basically. But what was published by someone else who went and photoshopped it was the Constitution there. So you can see that it looks like that's what they're ripping up, when that's not necessarily the case. But if you see it over there on the right, you're going to think, well, yeah, that was true, because you can't tell that that's fake. And that happens all the time, because there's a lot of people who are very sophisticated in manipulating different news stories and different pictures. So I want to show you a couple of videos now of just kind of what I'm talking about when it comes to how well people can actually manipulate different video. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video here. All right.
An altered video of Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi has been circulating online. An altered video of Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi has been circulating online. The video appears to show Speaker Pelosi slurring her words, but it is actually slowed down to create that effect. Well, here's a look at the doctored video next to the actual video.
We want to give this president the opportunity to do something historic for our country. We want to give this president the opportunity to do something historic for our country.
Jacob Ward covers Tech Force in San Francisco. Jacob, how did videos like this one spread so far online so fast, despite people acknowledging, people flagging them that they're fake?
You know, David, it's such an exciting thing that you want to talk about this, because I just think it's the craziest story. I mean, for one thing, this is the dumbest, simplest form of video alteration around. Just slowing down the audio, that is easy, man. There's there's nothing to it. And yet, because it falls into what so many people politically desire to see, which is, of course, what all of these algorithms tend to promote, it just spreads like wildfire. So across social media, you're seeing it just spread and spread and spread because of a combination of this incredibly simple piece of technology plus confirmation bias.
Jacob, we are like a year and a half out before the election, and we see how quickly this spread, how widely it got picked up. Help us understand the danger of these videos, these dumb edits, as you call them, ahead of the 2020 election.
I mean, for one thing, right, it obviously pierces our ability to think critically about this stuff. Over 1 million people are watching this in every place that it gets posted. And so you're just seeing it spread in this incredible way that I'm not sure how one controls. At the same time, this is just the beginning. I mean, in the same week that this came out, Samsung released an incredible new piece of research that basically shows that they can create a totally fake talking head just like mine right now. And in that case, between the sort of the incredible amount of political disinformation we're going to see both at home and abroad, plus the technology, it's really a scary moment here, David. I think we're really going to face a new kind of disinformation era.
Jacob, take us behind the walls of some of the companies that are near you in San Francisco who are trying to combat all of this. We saw Facebook out with a statement a little earlier today that they downgraded this video that was posted on. What are these companies doing? What can be done? Yeah,
that's the thing. I mean, right, you see, in this case, the business incentives of these companies bumping up against the obvious sort of public utility that we've come to sort of assume they are. So Facebook not taking it down. YouTube has done so, but Facebook saying, no, we're going to keep it up because they consider themselves a neutral platform where anything, can spread across there. I think the thing that's really scary here and is really worth noting is that if this stuff starts getting out, if disinformation videos like this get out, and you've created at that point a world in which not only do we start believing believing fake videos, as in this case, we're going to have license to disbelieve genuine video evidence. And
Jacob,
that, to me, is the scary part here.
Jacob, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Jacob Ward with us in San Francisco.
So that right there is an example of how easily video can be manipulated. And I have to tell you, it happens all the time. I can't tell you how many pictures we'll receive into our newsroom, especially when weather events happen, hurricanes, tornadoes, of either old pictures or a picture that someone has manipulated. One time I had someone send me a picture claiming that there was a tornado in their neighborhood. It was right in front of their car. That's what they told me. I looked closely at the picture and I noticed it was just their windshield wiper making an odd design in front of them that looked like a tornado, but pretty much they were trying to fool me so we would put it on the air. And some people do that intentionally so that they can say, oh, look, I fooled them. Look what pretty much these dummies did. They went ahead and ran with this information that I gave them. So unfortunately, people will try to do that all the time. But once again, here's an example of things. Visuals and memes are compelling vehicles of disinformation. So many memes are out there that people will believe that are true, and pretty much it's just some Joe Schmo at home who made it, you know, and then people will take that and run with it and say, you know what, this happened. It has to be true. I saw it on the internet. You have to check before you share anything because there's so many things out there that can look real and they simply are not true. So some more techniques for manipulation. You call them sock puppets. Anonymous accounts, bot, human, or hybrid, pretending to be something that they are not. You see it on Facebook. You also see it on Twitter, where these different bots will basically share information, and it's not true. Thousands of Twitter bots here targeted Kentucky with fake news on election night. Also, you'll see here, this tweet, it said just came across this and retweeted it out to Donald Trump, Matt Bevin, and also on the Kentucky GOP. Just shredded a box of Republican mail-in ballots. Bye-bye Bevin. For example, people are just pretty much trying to create their own narrative, and then in return, we get accused of being the ones who are irresponsible with the information. But you have to watch because there's so many anonymous accounts out there. You can usually tell because they have very few followers, and the pictures are not an actual person, and they are basically just out there on a mission to put out false information. Also, imposter content here, using trusted logos. I talked about this earlier, branding or names as a shortcut for credibility. So here you can see this reporter. She says these are fake screenshots. If you have doubts about the legitimacy of a headline, go directly to the actual source. This example is the Miami Herald website, where you can see that some information there had been manipulated. Also, source hacking. This is manipulating the news media and influential figures through lies and deception. Here's a story that was not true, but they said that the media had actually reported this information. So that's just a different example of things that you will see where people will manipulate different content. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there and just kind of just talk a little bit about how important it is to us that we try to get the information out that is correct, especially in these times. So it's so important that we fact check everything. And, you know, I have to admit, sometimes that doesn't always happen. People make mistakes. Trust me, it makes me really upset just as anyone else when we put information out there that's not true or information that is not neutral, that shows some type of bias. And sometimes, once again, it's not the intent of the person doing it. Sometimes they don't know how to weigh both sides accurately. And that's where, with my experience, I have to step in and make sure that that information is getting out to the public correctly without any type of bias. So once again, that's our main goal, is to basically gather the news, give it to the community, and let you know what's happening in your neighborhood so you can have the information. You can decide from there what you want to do. So if you guys have any questions for me, feel free to go ahead and ask.
Anthony, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep.
Yeah, Gerry Kelly, I'm going to read you. We have one question.
Okay.
Thank you so much. That was very informative.
No problem.
This is from William Inman. He asked, how much influence over First Coast News content is edited or otherwise controlled directly or indirectly by your parent company?
Okay, that's a very good question because we get asked this question all the time. NBC, we're NBC and ABC. They have very little to do with the local affiliates. Of course, we do use their stories from network news, like we'll use their reporters and such, but we're actually owned by a different company called Tegna They own several TV stations within the United States. In fact, we're one of the largest companies out there. And of course, I shared this at the beginning. So that information that I shared about our principles of ethical journalism, that's something that we're all supposed to abide by. But when it comes to like the actual mothership, as I call it, like NBC and ABC, they have very little control about what we report from day to day.
The next question is from Howard Dale. Why is so much time spent on weather on the local news?
Why is so much time spent on web? Okay, I'm going to try to answer that. I'm assuming because something that we do a lot of now is pushing you to our website.
No, on weather.
Oh, on weather. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said web. Okay.
No, weather. I'm sorry.
So ask that question to me one more time about.
Why is so much time spent on the weather on local news?
Okay, why so much time is spent on the weather? So studies have shown that people actually watch the news mainly for the weather. That's why we usually do it twice. And this is no matter where you go. And if you want to go home and watch this tonight, there's usually 2 weather hits. Usually there will be a first weather around like 6:05, 6:10. And then the main weather, no matter what TV station you watch these days, is going to be somewhere around 6:15. It's been like that for decades. It's usually 15 minutes into the newscast, you will see your full weather report. Studies show that people, once again, come to the news for weather because they want to know about making their different plans and whatever it may be. Now, that has changed because now I can pick up my phone and just open the weather app. But weather is still one of the leading sources of information that people come to the local news for. Especially, you should see whenever a hurricane happens or any major weather event, the ratings always go up because people want to know what's happening. Local news is still the most trusted source when it comes to weather that's happening in the community.
So we have a number of questions now.
Okay.
This is from Jack Sears.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any ethics involved when a reporter question goes beyond the who, what, when, and where, and why, in parentheses, fact-checking, close parentheses, and then calls for a speculative answer or opinion?
Okay. So this is a popular question too. So as reporters, because sometimes people think when we're questioning those, wherever you go to school for your journalism degree, one of the oaths that we take is to hold the powerful accountable. We ask information to our public officials or whoever it may be to basically get the correct answer about certain situations. You may ask us here that question over and over again, and you say, well, why is that reporter asking that question over and over again? Because sometimes we have received information from different sources, and we're trying to get to the bottom of it. So we may ask the same question over again because people don't tell us the truth. That's how it is. That's human nature. People don't always tell us the truth. And sometimes if we ask a question over and over again, we'll finally get the truth out of them. Because if you just ask it once, they'll give their canned answer and they'll go on from there. But if I ask it again, they may start opening up a little bit more and actually give us the actual truth of the situation. Now, you ask about the ethics of when someone goes too far on questioning. I think that's a matter of opinion when it comes to what is too much on questioning. That's our job. We ask all the questions that we can think of. Now, I don't think that you should be asking any questions with your own bias in it, of course, but we're trying to get the most accurate information. I don't know if that answered your question exactly, but I could go on and on about that when it comes to that.
So this question is from Susan Masucci. It says, do you have any specific team members at First Coast News who are trained and spending much of their time identifying deep fakes or things like that?
Yes, in fact, the PowerPoint that I just showed you, we all went through a training on that about looking through fake content and basically what we're looking for and different tools that we can use to also try to spot fake content that is out there. But like our web producers, for example, they're trained on spotting pictures and also videos. There's a way where you can do reverse image search on Google as your friend, because sometimes if the image looks a little bit too altered or it may not be true at all, you can go back, put that image in Google, and it'll show you the where it originated from, basically. Also, people will send us old pictures too. You can actually click on pictures and get the properties of it and find out the timestamp of when it was taken. We've had people send us pictures saying, especially people, this happens all the time. There's a lot of people out there who they're trying to get back at someone else, whether it be an ex a friend, an employer, well, they will put out fake information hoping that we do the story so they can basically discredit a person just because they don't like them. And they'll send us something and say, oh, this happened yesterday. We look at the picture, we found out it was taken 2 years ago. That happens all the time. So we're kind of all fact checkers, but we do have people who have a little bit more time to just focus on that to make sure that the information we've been sent in is actually true and accurate.
We have another question from Tracy Jenks. Is there somewhere we can go to see if a news article is correct, or that's basically the question.
Yes. So Snopes, S-N-O-P-E-S, is a good source to go to. There's also there's another website out there, and I should have looked this up. It's kind of escaping me right now, that you can look for when it comes to, like, especially political information, that they kind of keep it down the middle and they'll tell you whether it's true or not so true. But Google is really your best friend. If you have questions about anything, put that information in the search bar to see where it may have come from, because a lot of times you'll see that either it wasn't said, especially if a quote is attributed to someone, you can put that quote into Google and it'll pop up with who actually said it, or if the story is not true at all. But I know that Snopes is a good source where you can go to see if something is actually accurate or not.
This question is from Arnold Rogers. How is TV news gathered and promulgated differently from printed local news?
Okay, TV news is a little bit different because we are on a constant deadline because we have newscasts. So here at First Coast News, we have Good Morning Jacksonville. That starts at 4:30 a.m. They're on the air until 7. And then we have a noon newscast that's now an hour long. And then we have the 5, 5:36, 7, and also the 11. So with TV news, we are on a constant deadline. We don't really shoot too many stories in advance. The stories are usually turned the day of. So my day, and I'm glad you asked this question, because our day starts in the morning, usually around 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. with an editorial meeting. That's where the reporters come in and they pitch their stories for the day. And then our news director, that's my boss, he decides, or other managers, our executive producer, they decide what stories will be covered. And with TV news, you only have so much time to get stories covered because we only have an allotted amount of time within our newscast. Because, you know, a question that we're asked all the time, well, why wasn't this in the news today? Well, we're local news. We try to focus on local and not so much national because we only have 30-minute increments to include all the different news stories in. And then you have to also factor into that commercials and everything else, weather, sports. So we only have a certain amount of time. So with TV, the reporters are usually going out. Well, they don't really go out anymore too much because of coronavirus concerns. Everything's kind of done through Zoom now. But on a typical day, they would go out and gather their story from, let's say, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then they try to be back with everything that they need to be on the air by 5. Now, newspaper is a little different because they don't necessarily have those hard deadlines all the time. They can spend more time working on a story. They also have more room in the paper and online to include more information. And they also don't have to worry about video. We're still a visual medium, so we need the video to help us tell the story, or basically you're just looking at something boring on TV. Newspaper, they don't have to worry about that as much. So they have more time to tell a story. They have more space. So that's how things are a little bit different. The typical TV story, about 1:20, a minute 20. And you spend hours shooting that and you have to cut it all down to a minute 20. And they're even telling us in this day and age to kind of make things a little bit shorter because it's hard to keep people's attentions. So we try to make things a little bit more fast paced. So you'll see stories a little bit shorter just to make sure that we can cover as much as possible and also try to keep your attention at the same time, because once again, we're battling the phone, because who actually just sits down at TV and just looks? You're usually looking down at your phone, or you're cooking or doing whatever it may be. So we try to keep up the pace to keep your attention and tell you everything you need to know.
This question is from Bill Sorensen, and thank you so much for answering these questions.
No problem.
Can you comment on the leading captions for stories that are shared on your station's social media page, parent, and other news stations, close parent? There appears to be some effort to grab attention with somewhat sensationalistic headlines or leads. Do you feel this is intentional?
You know, that's something that bothers me too. That's usually a different department. That's the web department. And there is a little bit more of, I will say that they're trying to grab people's attentions when they put some of those headlines there to make sure that you see it and click on it. That's something that we are working on. And we had a whole training seminar about that, about making sure that our headlines are accurate and that we're not trying to sensationalize. Unfortunately, I will tell you that is something that you see, because once again, they are trying to basically draw your attention in. And that's not, I'm not a fan of that, but that does happen. but that is someone else, especially, and I can tell you, being the anchor or the reporter who wrote that story, sometimes we're not the people responsible for putting the headlines in. Sometimes they change them. Sometimes that they will put in their own captions, but we do go back and look and say, hey, that's not the intent of my story. Can you please change that to make it, you know, less sensational or whatever it may be? But that's something you're seeing a lot in our business, is people just try to attract different attention and get more people to click on those stories.
And this question is from Michael Mayo, and you kind of answered it, but I think it deserves to be asked again. And who sets the agenda for what is covered and reported daily?
Yes. So who sets the agenda? That is, we have an assignment manager. That's the person who is on the desk. They're pretty much in charge of putting out the different stories that we're going to cover for the day, and also the coverage plan. You also have the news director and assistant news director. They make the final decisions. They also check scripts. I check scripts as well too, that the reporters bring in, but they kind of lead the content from day to day on what will be covered and what won't be covered, or what will be saved, etc. So that's my boss. He's actually over here in the corner office right now. So he's the one who's in charge of looking through everything and basically deciding what our newscast will look like from day to day, even months in advance sometimes when it comes to different stories or special reports.
And Anthony, I want to thank you for your candor. Bill Sorensen and Jack Sears also would like to say out loud that we'd like to thank you for your candor. Thank you for taking the time to answer these difficult questions. No problem. You know, I understand completely. I know our business. Once again, I know things are under fire, and I know that there's things that get out there sometimes that doesn't portray us in the best light. So my job is just to try to explain a little bit about why things happen and what we're actually trying to do. I can't speak for everyone, but I can tell you for myself what I try to do. Well, thank you again. No problem. Thank you all. Thank you to all of the members, many of you who work behind the scenes to keep our club running. It would not be possible to have success without you. I've talked to many of you and want you to know how much I appreciate your feedback, ideas, and comments. We have a lot of work to do, and I look forward to working with our committee chairs, growing our club, providing great programs like today, and seeking new ways to promote Rotary's great work in our community. Please be sure to mark your calendar for the district seminar on October 24th, previously held in August, as the 3 keys to success: membership, public image, and foundations. We'll post more information as it becomes available. Committee chairs, if you have not, please begin communication with your committees. Review your committee list to make sure that the DAC-DB reflects who is on your committee. And let us know if there needs to be any changes made to that committee list. If you need to host a meeting or would like to do it via Zoom, we'll be happy to help you doing that. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I appreciate everyone's support. That concludes today's meeting. Please join us next Monday at noon, where we'll hear from retired Colonel Chris Costa. He was former Special Assistant to the President and Senior Director for Counterterrorism. And his talk will be A View from the Counterterrorism Foxhole. Thank you. This concludes today's meeting.